Welcome back to Spooky Review, you guys. Oh my goodness, it's been a really long time since I've done a spooky review, and so much has happened. I've put out my brand new series, my book series, 1377 Rickaby Lane and Purdy House, The Cold Room, which is book 1 and book 2 of my Rickaby Lane series, which is a haunted fiction, horror fiction book series. And I'm really looking at things a lot differently, and it just dawned on me, why am I not doing book reviews as well? Because I read a lot of horror and haunted fiction, and I love to watch movies, but I have a little twist of what I want to do now. So one of the things that I was thinking about is, when we were doing the spooky review originally, it just seemed like it was white noise. Even though we had fun doing it, it was a lot of reviewing the same things that everybody else is reviewing. And to me, that just seems a little monotonous. Also, it's hard to get views when people are inundated with these reviews already all over the place. So one of the things that it just dawned on me is that I really love finding old movies, old classics, and watching those, because the movies are done so differently. And one of the things that I just recently realized is that the stories are told better. They really take time unraveling the story. And where sometimes you can watch other movies and think, gosh, there must have been some stuff on the cutting room floor, it seems like these old classic movies really take their time, and they focus more on getting the story out versus giving you a lot of jump scares. And they had to be a lot more creative with how they scared you, because they didn't have all of the, CGI and stuff like that. And there's a couple of movies that I just watched that I want to recommend, and I'm definitely going to put them in the link below, because one of them in particular is really hard to find. The other one you have to pay for. But it's worth it. Okay, so the other thing I want to do is I want to start doing book reviews, right? And they're not going to be super long. I'm just going to tell you if I liked them or I didn't, and give you a basic premise. So let's get into it. Let's first start with the books. Okay, so I really want to pump this person up, because he is an amazing writer, and I myself am learning and kind of studying what he's doing. And I am learning so much from him about the marketing aspect of a writer. So stay tuned for that, because I'm also creating a website, and it's going to have all of my books, and I'm learning a lot, and there's going to be freebies and stuff like that where you can get free horror. And maybe some of my other books too, because there's definitely going to be a page for all the other spiritual stuff that I do. But the main thing is it's going to be for horror fans. Okay, so what I want to first share with you is an author named Lee Mountford. And the first book that I read on him, I'm always looking for indie writers, and this one had great reviews, and it's called Haunted Perone Manor from Lee. Okay, and I highly recommend this. The story is amazing. It's about this mansion. Of course, I don't want to give away too much, but it's about this old mansion, and I believe they said it was around since like the 1200s, so it's really old. I need to drink my coffee. It's really, really old. And because it's really, really old, there have been a ton of deaths in that house. But there's a sinister plot. There's a lot more going on than just people have passed away or been murdered. There's some real sinister stuff that's gone in that house. But there is a twist with this house. And I'm continuing to read, because this is a series. This was book 1. Then I went on to, one of the cool things about what Lee does too is he offers you some free stuff. Now, he offers different free books that you can get, and one of them is in relation to this. It's inside Perone Manor, and it talks about, like in this book, they talk about how a character that comes in that is not a major character at all. He's in there kind of briefly, and he tells a little bit about the house, but he had gone in with the previous owner, and he had actually done a paranormal investigation. Well, we never get to hear about that investigation. So what Lee has done is he has offered that investigation for free. So you can actually go onto his website and you can download that. If you give him your email address, you can download the investigation. And it's also on audiobook as well, but for free you can get the ebook. So that one is, I believe, is called Inside Perone Manor. And that one was fantastic. I ended up going and getting it on audiobook, and I just loved it. So this one I gave 5 stars. Inside Perone Manor, which is a freebie on ebook on his website, or audiobook where you pay for it or use your credits if you're a member. It was fantastic. Now I'm on the second book in the series, and it's called Haunted Devil's Door. Again, I gave this 5 stars, and it's a continuation of Perone Manor. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you too much. I'm just going to tell you that there are so many levels and layers to this house and the previous owners, and what he's doing is he's taking us backwards through it. So I'm really excited. I'm waiting for my next credit to buy the rest of his books. Okay. So those are 5 stars. The author is Lee Mountford. Highly recommend it. Okay, the next one I really love is Ron Ripley, and this is called Berkeley Street. Again, this is inside of a house with a lot of history. But the interesting thing with this one is that it gave me that kind of, I wonder if this person was inspired by this or not, but it gave me that kind of feel of Rose Red. If you read the book, even if you just watched the movie, or the series or whatever it originally was, if you read it, the book really unpacked how the house changed. So people would disappear inside the house because the house, you would go into one room, and when you'd come back out, the hallway would be a different hallway. And so people could easily get lost in that house. And it has the same idea as a house that's eating the people. This is kind of like that, and so it gave me that spooky feel, much the way that Rose Red did. If you guys haven't read the book on Rose Red, go out and get it, or get it on Audible. However you take in your reading. But I highly recommend this. I'm also going to be buying all of these, so I'm waiting again for. I'm going to get the rest of the series. I think this is the one you can get 1 through 9 with 1 credit. I'm going to get that when my credit comes up, and then I'm going to buy the next book here. And I will say one thing with Lee Mountford's reader, the person that does the voice actor for his books, it takes a minute to get used to him because he can be a little bit corny. And I have seen some reviews where people couldn't take his voice, so they went back to reading the books. I am starting to do both because I read so much, and my eyes, I have poor vision, and so it helps me out to do a little bit of both. I kind of tested it with Inside Perone Manor, the extra about the paranormal investigation, and I really loved it, actually. So I'm gonna do a little mixture of both because I also love sitting down with a book. So this one, Ron Ripley, this series, Berkeley Street, I highly recommend. I loved one, and it made me just want to read all of them. So I'm going to be doing 1 through 9. I gave them a 5-star as well. The next one, and by the way, all of these I read last month in December. I read Haunted Perone, I listened to Inside Perone Manor, and then I read Haunted Devil's Door and Berkeley Street. So a total of 4 books in 1 month, which is a lot for me, but I love reading. Okay, The Hollows. I got a review from somebody online, and I really loved the idea of this book. She said it was really scary, and one of the things that the woman said was, she said, if you really loved, it was a Stephen King book. Oh God, what book was it? It's one of Stephen King's book. Maybe it'll come to me. It doesn't really matter. But basically, she said it's kind of like one of Stephen King's books, but it happened to be one of the books that was extremely long. And for people who had a really hard time getting through his book because it was really, really long, she said that they would love this one. Well, she had me at Stephen King. And so I was like, okay. She said it has to do with, winter and people and how they endure winter and the things they have to do. And it also has to do with like some kind of spooky beast, winter beast, or some kind of something going on that's a mystery. And I thought, this sounds good to me. So I will tell you that when I first read this one initially and I started reading it, I started to realize just in the beginning, I'm like, I don't even know if I really like any of these characters. And usually for me, that's a deal breaker. If I can't like some of the characters, like if a writer has written all characters that are unlikable, I won't even finish the book because why would I want to waste my time reading about all these characters that I can't like? I want to get into them and root for them, right? And you got to have an antagonist, right? I understand that, but an antagonist doesn't always have to be a person. It could be a beast, or it could be a situation, or different things. But I stuck with it, and it did. I was able to actually like the main character after all. And there's a family that you learn to really hate them. But there's also one character in the family that you hate that is the one that's bullied. And as soon as she came in, I started rooting for her. And that's when the story changed for me. It's like, okay, I want to keep reading because I want to see what happens to that character. And then the main character, who is a police officer, she started growing on me too. So I gave this one, I think, a 4.5 or a 4-star, just because it is pretty long. Let me see. I think it's definitely over 400 pages. Yeah, it's 450 pages, which is fine. I love reading books, so if it's a really good book, I don't mind reading it if it's really long. But for the beginning, for me, was a little bit hard. It took me a little bit to get into it, and I'd gather that it took her a little. Daniel or Danielle? Daniel. It's a guy. It probably took him a little while to get started with it. So I give this one about a 4, but it's definitely, if you like these winter scary mysteries where people are trapped in by the weather and they have to deal with some kind of beast or something, you will like that. Okay. The other one that I want to share with you is called Haunting Adeline. And I am sure this one book 1 or 2? I don't know which one I grabbed. I think I grabbed book 1, and I'm doing book 2. I have that, but I took a break from it because there were some other things that I just wanted to read, and I needed a break from I'm not well versed in that. But there's a lot of Sado going on in this book. I didn't realize that this book was going to be like heavily and obviously that's why people love her, because if you put stuff, people are going to line up around the corner. She does such a good job with her characters. They're fascinating, and it keeps you reading. You're like, what the heck is going on with these people? Like some of this, I will be honest that some of the scenes, after a while, it's like the same thing. He's causing her pain and she loves it, and there's always this threat of what he's going to do to her if he punishes her. But then the relationship, they clearly, obviously love each other. There's something there. But for people who have had, I would say it's definitely a trigger, because there's a scene in there that is, I was reading it and I was a little disturbed at the first scene, because it was basically, this is kind of a spoiler, but it was basically kind of like, but then we realize later that she's into it. I don't know which one is which, but one of them loves giving pain and the other one loves to receive it. And that's what these are. It's a great story. She's a really good writer, but if you are triggered, this might not be the book for you, but she is a fantastic writer. It's a really good book, very descriptive. It takes place, the majority of it takes place inside of her granny's mansion, and there's a history to that mansion. Yeah, so I'm not going to give away too much, but you will definitely like it. I think this is book 2, because I have a marker in here where I started and then I'm like, I need a break from. If you're wondering why there's so many bleeps, I'm trying not to get flagged by YouTube. Certain words will cause you to get flagged or cause your video to not be promoted. This book was good though, so I decided to go through the trouble. So I forget what the first one is, but it looks just like that. And the author's name is H.D. Carlton. So I gave this one I think I gave this one a 4.5 stars or a 4. I think, am I able to give a 4.5 star? I don't know. I gave it a 4 star or a 4.5 star only because there was just, to me, I know people love it for all the, but for me, I was like, I don't need all of that, but that's her thing. You know what I mean? So she would be like kind of my writer, but I don't know that beyond book 2. I actually bought book 2 because I was reading book 1 on an airplane. Actually, I just remembered this. I was reading book 1 on an airplane, and a girl 2 seats behind me and like on the other side of the seat, she tapped me and she's like, "Hey," when I was getting up, she's like, "I saw the book you're reading," and she goes, "It ends on a cliffhanger, so you're going to want to get 2." And I'm like, "Did you like it?" And she goes, "Yeah, it was so amazing." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I went out and I got it already. Actually, while I was on the plane and we were like taxiing, I bought it. I probably would not have bought the book after book 1 just because I'm not into reading a bunch of, but I would have still given her a great review because she tells a great story. So there you have that. Okay, and I want to take a moment to show you my little girl. She is so cute, but she is, I don't know if in this light you can see, but she's a vampire. Can you see her little fangs? They're like painted on. And her ears, one of her earrings is a bat wing. So cute. Totally sassy. My husband got me this, and she has a little backpack that's like, I wish I could show her to you. She wouldn't have shown up in the background with everything back there. And hopefully you can see back here my little demon doll. And I've got my Ozwald, which he's short for Ozzy. He's an antique doll that's, I think, over 60 years old. He's an old antique doll. And these are real clothes. He's been in other spooky reviews before. Okay, so then the next one, this is one that I'm going to be reading, but Lee Mountford and what's his name again? Ron Ripley. I'm really fascinated with them, so I'm going to start focusing on just getting through their series. I absolutely love it. But this one I started to read and then realized it's book 14 of her series, but I'm still reading it anyway. It's called Haunting Danielle, the Ghost and the Bride by Bobby Holmes. This one is book 14. And so far when I'm reading it, it's interesting. Nothing major has happened. There's a wedding. There's a very forgetful husband who has clearly been in some major accident where he lost his memory. But I think he's faking the loss of his memory because in this book, he just called somebody from memory and she did not want to hear from him. So there might be some affair that happened and he was somewhere in another state where he shouldn't have been when the crash happened. So I'm intrigued. I am intrigued. I'm probably going to keep reading because I'm waiting for my other books to come while I do this. But so far I'm okay with this. It's mediocre right now. We'll see where it goes, and I can't give an honest review on that one yet. So I don't want you to take that as a yes or no if you're considering this, because literally I'm starting in book 14. But if you're a good writer and you had a great editor, your editor would have told you that you need to make sure that whoever picks this book, your books up in any order when you have a series, that they can figure out what's going on just from reading the series out of order, because sometimes that happens. Just like me, I saw this book and I was interested and I'm like, oh, okay, and I bought it, and then I realized later I didn't really look closely enough to realize where it was in the series, but it seemed interesting to me, so I bought it anyway. Okay, so with all of those books, I just wanted to give you reviews on those books, and I want to now talk to you about the movie. So, the first movie that I want to share with you is called The Nightmare, and it's a 1964 classic. Don't ask me who the author or the actors are, because I don't know any of them and I didn't write any of them down, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link down below. Now, what got me originally to be interested in this, because I was seeking on YouTube some classic movies to watch, and I went through the list and I found one and I clicked on it, and right away it captured me because it starts off as though you're going through, you see these gates, these gates that are always ominous, right?
Janet, where are you, Janet?
A gate that kind of, it's a gate that keeps people out from some big castle or mansion or something, and it always has some sort of ominous feel that you shouldn't go in there, right? But then it's almost like a dream. It's like a dream state where the gates open up and you're seeing this from the person's eyes, and we don't even know who the person is, and they go through, and they're taking us through these really haunting halls, and this girl is hearing voices that are telling her to go deeper and deeper, and it just creates this scary feeling like, don't go in there. But you get the sense that if it's real, they're showing it to us in a very dreamy state. And she ends up in this room, and I'm not going to tell you what else happens, but right from that I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. But the thing that really got me was the soundtrack. It was really spooky, and I'm really getting into listening to different haunted soundtracks from the past. And you can't see I'm blocking it, but I have a record player, and at some point I want to get a gramophone. I want it like to be like legit. But one of the things that I want to start doing is I want to start buying really old or just old classic scary movie soundtracks, so that when I'm writing, I can actually put a record on and have that ambiance. Now, yes, I can go on Epidemic Music, and I have a list, that I created of all haunted sounds. So when I write my books, I can have the music to back it. But sometimes you just want to be disconnected completely from technology and put on a record and just have it spinning while I write. Okay, so I'm so excited. I was really blown away by that. So I'm gonna link that movie down below because it's really spooky, and this is where I said it didn't rely on jump scares and things. It's when you're watching black and white movies, you really have to pay attention to the way that they shade things, and things that move that shouldn't be moving in the background, like a bellowing of a curtain when someone walks into a room where all of the doors are, and the windows are shut. They rely on thunder sounds and flickering of candles, but even more than that, they rely on the storyline. And this is why old movies, to me, sometimes are so much better, because they have to rely on the depth of the storyline and that it all fits together. And this one, I don't want to tell you the story. I just want to tell you that there's a young girl who is scared to death that she is insane, or that she will go insane because something happened with her mother when she was younger. And her mother was insane. And she is terrified that she is going to be the same way. And she's taking you through what's happening to her in her mind. But what really caught me off guard was this deeper story of things that were happening that we didn't even know until the very end. And so it's a really great movie. I definitely give it 5 stars. I want you to watch it. I'm going to put the link below and you can watch the entire thing for free. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one is called The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. Now, I heard about this movie because I am actually listening to an audio book right now, or Audible right now. Oh God, I cannot remember for the life of me. It's an Audible original, so it's free to me. But in that book, and this is what I love about just constantly consuming fiction and just consuming knowledge, basically, you always get referred to something else. So I'm listening to this haunted fiction story on Audible, and because the guy is a writer he's a nonfiction writer, and he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he wants to. And he goes in and he studies all these things and he writes books about them. Kind of that 1408, situation, that movie 1408. Someone who's, he doesn't believe, he's not as pessimistic as the John Cusack character in Room 1408. But he wants to believe. But he goes into this notorious house, and it's interesting how he negotiates, like being allowed in there because the owner doesn't want to let him in, and she doesn't even live there. She bought it. And anyway, he ends up in there, and he's going into this house, and he's going to just do total sensory deprivation, live in there, not go outside for 14 days. So far, it's been pretty cool book. For a free book, I was not expecting it to be as good as it is. In that Audible, he references The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. So of course I had to look that up, because whenever somebody references another book, I'm going to look it up. So or movie. I looked it up, and it was a movie with Don Knotts. And again, it was a black and white classic movie. And as soon as I saw the trailer, I fell in love with it. Because I like Don Knotts a lot. I didn't realize I liked him as much as I do until I watched this, because I just remember him from, Three's Company as Jack Tripper's landlord. And he was always very slapstick humor and goofy, but very shaky. Well, he's pretty brilliant. Now that I look at him as an adult and I go back and I watched this movie, I went on Prime and I had to pay, I think, $2 or $3.99 for it. But it's really worth it, because again, there's a heartwarming story. This guy is very awkward, but he's also very lovable. There's a girl that he likes. There's a bully in the story. He gets the girl. I'm sorry, I just gave you like a what do you call spoiler? Spoiler alert, too late. There's that whole story where you're rooting for him, and there are very likable characters. There's a group of women called the Psychic Occult Society, and it all, and he's a typesetter, but he wants to be a newsman. And then there's all these little sub stories that are going on, but he gets his big break to be able to go into this mansion that's about to be torn down, and it's notorious for a murder suicide. So he goes in and he has this experience, and he kind of becomes famous. But then the guy who owns the house that's tearing it down, he's part of the family that the murder suicide happened. And he has his motivations for wanting to tear it down. And now because of, the Don Knotts character going in and sharing his experience, and it gets printed, there's all this hubbub around the house where they don't want it torn down anymore because it has historical value to the town. And this kind of enrages the current owner, who wants to get rid of it for a very specific motivation. So I'm not going to tell you any more than that, other than there is a lot going on in that story. There's a lot of plot, and it does not disappoint. And so I give that movie 5 stars also. So even though the character is silly, he's also heartfelt. You also feel for him. It reminded me of so many people today. You know, we today we talk about social awkwardness all the time, but back in the day they didn't really have like, okay, he's on the spectrum or she's on the spectrum, or I'm socially awkward. We didn't really have those words. We had the words like, or I should say they, because he's like beyond my generation. He's like my parents' generation. They would just say someone was painfully shy, you know, and you feel for him, and you want to root for him, you know, to be able to say the right words at the right time, but he really struggles with it. But then he also has that funniness of how he is so expressive with his body, and this is something that's missing from a lot of actors today. Like Diane Keaton, for instance, is a physical actress. You know, she's very funny with her body. Well, a lot of people kind of paved the way for that kind of humor, and Don Knotts is one of those people. And although I didn't really appreciate him when I was younger for being that goofy, when I look back at the classics and see, without all of this extra stuff that we rely on today to tell a story, and he had none of that. He only had his body and the plot of the story and his acting to tell the story. You know, that really makes a difference for me. Now, the other thing is, if I could give it an extra star, I would give it 6 stars, because I guess anytime somebody puts a real organ in it and it has like an organ solo, that just is going to get an extra star for me. So technically, I'm going to give The Ghost and Mr. Chicken 6 stars, because there is an organ song in there that is fantastic, and they actually give time for you to hear the song. They don't rush it off the screen. They actually let you hear it, and then they show the ambiance of where it's playing. It's just really, really amazing. So you guys, I'm so excited to be able to share all this information with you, and I want you to stick around. Please, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to it. Please also go on to my Instagram page and go on to the Spooky Review page, as well as my author page, The Imperfect Author Sufani. I am going to be sharing and cross-promoting Spooky Review, and it will now be books and movie classics. I don't know that I'm so much going to be reviewing the current movies. I'm more interested in educating people on, and myself on the classics that a lot of us have never heard of, or we've forgotten to pay homage to, that kind of paved the way for what we see today most commonly. That is my intent, to do that as often as I can when I have a collection of things that I can share with you. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. Stay spooky.
Goodbye.
Thanks for watching.